Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new season of Unit Feel, where we make a tier list based on how fun units are to use. And of course, with me is the expert in all things Unit Feel, Professor Bopper. How are you doing today, Bopper?
I'm doing pretty well, and I'm also deeply honored to be called an expert in a field that has absolutely no facts or logic behind it. That feels very good.
Yeah, it's not my usual brand for tier lists. Usually it's all about analyses and numbers, and if you do this, then you can always do that. But this is a lot more personal. It's been a while since we've done one of these, so Bopper, to people who are new, or since it's been a while, could you explain what Unit Feel is, roughly?
Yeah, so put simply, Unity Feel is how much fun is a character to use. So, in a traditional tier list that strives to show like how good a character is, it's usually how useful are they in a specific context. In Unit Feel, it's are they fun to use? And that's going to vary from player to player. For some players, using highly efficient strategies is going to be the most fun. For some players, training garbage units is going to be a whole lot of fun. So it's mostly just a form of trying to figure out what are trends in Fire Emblem that make some characters more fun or interesting to use than others. And
the opposite, yeah.
To a certain extent, is going to react differently, or what makes characters boring to use.
Yeah.
So highly subjective, but also fun to talk about.
Definitely fun discussion subject. I have like 2 seasons of worth of that in a playlist that I'll link down below if you're interested in more of these. These, however, are going to be aimed at specifically engaged characters. I asked my patrons, thank you all for contributing and financially and with these. I asked them to submit characters for us to discuss, and we're going to just rank them from good feel to mid feel to bad feel. Usually the good feel and the bad feel tiers ends up way more populated than the mid feel, because middling feel usually means bad feel, whereas good feel is pretty distinct. So just spoilers, that middle thing is going to be pretty hard to do. It's usually going to be some kind of compromise between what I think and what Bopper thinks. And I don't only have engaged characters, it's just a main meal because I encourage them to submit engaged characters since that game is brand new. But just to show you, I have more right here. I have some characters that are not from engaged because you weren't obligated to submit engaged characters. So I've also got Donald, Ross, Sumia, Shadow Dragon Bantu, and Charlotte from Conquest up here. And then I also put all the characters that were not submitted from engaged, which is a surprising amount with some characters that I did not expect to make this list, like Alir and Ivy and Zelkov. I thought all of these would be in here, but they're not. So I guess we're saving those for future episodes. But just so you know, I didn't forget about these. They're just going to be a little bit later because we're probably going to be doing this over multiple parts. I'm expecting like 3 parts, maybe 4. That's about how long the usual ones took. A lot of characters were double submitted by people, which is basically just an easy out for me to say, hey, let's work for us, I guess.
Yes.
But if you didn't get yours in here because it was double submitted, well, first of all, sorry, but someone else already did it. But you'll probably be able to submit one that is unique next time. All right. And
there's only like 600 characters in this series anyway. So
yeah, exactly. A lot of them we've already done too. Like, damn, the list is long. We have less characters than usual. So we're not making much progress here. Just because I know it sticks out like a sore thumb, Sami is here to replace a character that's been submitted, but that's a slight spoiler for Engaged. So he's there as a reminder that I have to tier that character, but we're not actually tiering Sami because obviously Sami goes in good. There's no discussion necessary.
Yeah, Sami gets his own tier.
Exactly. But that would mess up my overlay, so he's not going to get his own tier. But spiritually, he's going to get his own tier. Okay, so let's see. We get started, and then if you still don't understand the process, then maybe watching a couple will help you. So, I put them in order of recruitment, but definitely not in order of submissions. Every once in a while I have to refer to my sheet to make sure to thank the right person for submitting them. So the first submission is Vander from Thick Molder, the Jacob of the series. And for me, there's a lot of overlap between how good a unit is and how good they feel. Like a character that demolishes everything, for me, is one of the most fun things in Fire Emblem. So early on, that correlates pretty much perfectly to how Vander feels. Like, he's very, very good, and then he slowly falls off, both in unit feel and in terms of how good he is in a tier list or something. So for me, it's a downward curve that starts off high. And, if you bench him, you never get that bad feel. And so Vander just feels very, very good. And in a tier list, you denote that by putting him in mid tier or maybe even a lower tier. But here, I could just put him in good and pretty much be fine. The only thing is, there's a couple things about Vander that make him, for me, a bit annoying. For example, the part that I'm maddening, if you position him correctly, he's going to take 0 damage, and enemies will be like, well, I'll just not attack you, and that's just stupid. It's funny, so that's still kind of good, but it's kind of stupid. Enemies are just like, nah, I'm just going to stand here doing nothing. But other than that, he just kind of absorbs all the attacks that your units can't, and kicks a bunch of butt, and he is a good voice actor. So for me, I probably throw him in good to have a good start. What about you?
The very first thing I did with Vander in my run was give him horse manure as a gift. If that explains
Wow.
how I feel about him.
What? Why?
And because the engage passive dialogue is written by an AI script, he was like, "Oh, delicious! I've been dying for some of this."
Really?
I don't know. Well, okay, the actual reason I did that was not actually because I dislike Vander. It's because I was like, "Can you really give this as a gift?" And he was sitting at the lunch table in his big suit and the monocle, and I was like, "Dinner is served." Which I love. I love the way he looks on the Somniel. Vander for me is like, I know that once we know Engage a lot more, people are going to make videos of him like soloing the game and killing the final boss and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But they actually made a Jagan that falls off properly now, and I never thought we'd see it. And I never thought it would feel so bad. I'm not huge on Vander, and I think it's because okay, the experience gain that he gets is really slow, which typically wouldn't matter, but because of how like SP works, because it matches EXP, he doesn't get any of that either. So he's one of the least flexible characters in the game, and so he really just kind of serves his purpose, which is fine, and I appreciate that. But it also like is, I don't know, not super fun to me in a game that gives you so many options. So like, I appreciate him for eating that Rider's Bane in chapter 1 or 2. I forget how they number those early chapters.
Yeah.
I think it's chapter 2.
Lumer.
Right? I appreciate that. Yeah. That was really nice of him. But also, I was kind of, he just kind of faded. Yeah.
That's fair. The point about low XP gain is a good one, because if there's one thing that's like good feel in Fire Emblem, it's getting good level ups. And he has good growth, but not a whole lot of level ups to go because his XP gain is so crap. So I'll resonate with that. I'll throw him a mid. I think that's a fair way to put it. All right.
Yeah. Basically, the problem is they made a good Jagan, and I can't believe it.
Can't believe they took a page out of Epi6's book. Can't believe it.
Yes.
Okay. Clan submitted twice, once by Jacob and once by Surge149. Thank you. And Clan for me is like one of those early game try him out and then throw him on a bench kind of units. I don't have a whole lot of experience with him. The experiences I did have was like, okay, he demonstrates how good magic is, and then he lets you use better characters that can actually use that magic well, so that you have both a good unit and a good unit type, whereas Clan is just one of those things. So it's kind of, it's not great. Like, raising units that you know you're going to bench never feels that great because you have no incentive to do anything with them other than what is strictly necessary. And so there's a kind of feeling of, I have to do this, but it doesn't really matter to me what happens with this unit. Like, if I wasn't not willing to let people die, I would not care about the outcome of this battle. That's the kind of non-attached feeling I get from Clan. There was one moment, though, that made me really appreciate him, and that was when I realized that the Engage AI often, maybe not always, but often prioritizes doing damage over counterattacking. So when his Armor Knight ignored like Vander and Louise with their one range weapons equipped over Clan with his 1-2 range, and he had like a javelin and he got countered for like 1,000,000 damage, I was like, wow, that is pretty cool. I want to pull out those kind of moves more often, but that is not unique to Clan, not unique enough to where I would put him higher. So for me, I probably put him in mid at best, and I could see an excuse to put him in bad. What about you?
Yeah, Clan sort of represents this problem that's going to infect like the first, almost like the entire first half of the Engage cast, where it really is you use them, and then if you really like them, you keep them, or if you don't, they're just going to give you like an equivalent mid-game unit that's a lot better. This might be the game where like the most amount of mid-game units are just the most fun to use, which tends to be the opposite in a lot of Fire Emblem games. It's like the serviceable ones that just kind of get it done are the mid-game ones, but here they're like the best. And I don't know, Clan is like, it's fun to blow up Armor Knights with him. But you know, stuck to 4 move because he's in that early game miasma where everyone's move sucks. And he predates a lot of the good Engage rings, so I feel like he just kind of fades before Engage starts to give you all the good stuff. But he does get extra points for me for being able to just explode Armor Knights. And Mystical's honestly like pretty nice. It's nice to ignore terrain bonuses when everyone else has like trash hit, and then he can just like, I mean, I guess it's not that nice because then he does like 5 damage. And you're like, oh wow, okay, that got us nowhere.
Yeah,
but you know,
yeah, that really depends. I feel like I've ignored the mystical trait like a lot in the game, which might be a me thing, like it might be a me problem. But yeah, that's true. There was one other thing it's probably good to bring up or like emphasize that like the way characters behave, like the way they talk, the way they socialize, the way they talk to supports, like the characters, not just the units, but as characters, that also greatly impacts unit feel. That greatly impacts how you feel about a unit a lot of the time. Half the fun is their alliance. And Clan's personality also is a super interesting effect. If you don't like the avatar worship that Engage does, and then Clan and his sister are like the poster child of that. Like they're children on the poster.
Yes.
So that if you don't like that, and I'm not a big fan personally, then you're also going to be real annoyed with Clan. So I think that's another reason to have him as our first bat over here. Plus the color kind of matches. So
yeah, it does match. Clan also, his introduction's also great. Characters that get introduced running away and screaming and getting killed oftentimes don't feel super good in combat.
That's true. I'm glad they made him throw away his tome for combat too, just to make that happen.
It's the Cecilia problem. Just show up on a map that's terrible for you, and it just kind of makes everything feel bad. Even though you can't control him, you just watch him get beat up.
Yeah, I was about to say it's hard to look good as an NPC. Some areas pulled off, but Clan is not one of them.
No.
All right. Shall I move on to Fram? Let's just get it out of the way. Divine Dragon looked at me and she just kind of gushes at it like all the way through the entire game. She never gets used to it. It's very funny. It's a very funny voice line. I hate it because of the problem I mentioned about Clan, but it is very, very entertaining. Fram was submitted by Lizard Socks, by the way, so thank you. I think sure, your first half of units are being hurt by how Engage's unit viabilities are set up and how the early game cast is most likely to get benched, and that has a whole non-commitment problem attached to it. But there's one cool thing about being introduced early that really helps, I think, with Fram especially, and that's that it's your first unit that's a Chi Adept, and so you get to try out some new tools that the game gives you, like chain guarding and I guess healing if you're new to Fire Emblem. But mostly, this chain guarding feels very good. When Fram took that Rider's Bane for my Vander, I was like, damn, calculated, I'm so good at the game. That can't be a bad feeling. And then, I mean, that was kind of it for like her good feels, because everything else was just generic healing with your very occasional chain guard. I didn't make use of it very much. Again, might be a me problem, but this is a me show because it's unit feel, so it's all personal. But I don't think there's too much for her to do after that, so that's kind of where it ended, and you can't ride the whole game based on one funny thing, so she probably goes a mid at best for me. What about you?
Oh, I actually think Fram's one of the more interesting characters to talk about on unit feel, especially for the early cast. One, on the support, she's one of the most unhinged characters in Fire Emblem. Like, I was watching you sleeping, Divine Dragon. Like, I know everybody's strange like that, but she's the introduction to it, and is like talking about, look how sweaty you are. And it's, oh no. And because she's an early game character, you're gonna basically be forced to watch that support.
Oh, true.
So that's like horrifying, but also kind of funny. On the point about her being the first Chi Adept, I find okay, I don't want to alienate too many viewers here, but there's this like problem, there's this chess problem, like this intellectual like puzzle problem where if your opponent just has a king and then you have 2 pawns and your pawn reaches the other side and you turn it into a queen, it causes a stalemate. You don't win because you picked the most powerful piece, because you created no legal moves on the board.
I wonder where this is going. I have no
for
clue.
The king. And Fram kind of has that problem where she's your first healer, she's your first chi adept, she's your first person with fists. So there's 3 things she can do that are very powerful: block damage, heal, and break bows and magic users. But because she's the only one that does that, she kind of just has to be a healer to let the whole Fire Emblem machine continue to run, because for Chi Adept, she can only do it once, and then there's no one to heal her. For breaking, if you do that, then you lose your healer for the turn, and she's not doing a whole lot of damage. So oftentimes, it's just better to have her heal. So she has all these unique properties, like a queen does, but she kind of just has to be a rook, because you need that more than anything else.
It's like a queen, you can only move like a rook.
Yes. She's a queen that has to move like a rook.
Okay, I sort of see it. That's great.
Yeah.
I gotta say that analogy is slightly stretchy, but I like it so much that I'll allow it.
Yeah.
I have a counterpoint though, because I completely forgot in my explanation that she can use fists. Because, like you said, she's forced to move as a rook. So I forgot to move her as a bishop every now and then. The fist thing, it has that trainee factor, right? It's like, okay, the enemy's at like 1 HP. Oh, I can't kill, but I can totally flex on them by having a leader go next to her, and then I use the fist and I do like 6 more damage, which in this game that overrides doing 0 damage, even if you're like far in the negative as far as damage calculation is concerned. Like a leader just adds +3 damage to the fist per hit, and then you kill someone with the fists with a unit with like 4 strength and 1 magic or whatever it is that she has. The damage calculation for fists is kind of weird, but it's very difficult to find kills with Fram because the fists are so underpowered and her stats are not very good. But when you do manage it, it's great. It's not going to matter because you're not training this unit long term, especially if you're playing now as opposed to when the game just came out. But the flex factor is kind of big. There's always like one unit in a playthrough, especially in the early game, where when you have a unit that's so bad that you have to like completely go out of your way to set up a kill, you'll go for it just because it's funny, especially if you're like making YouTube content. It's like, kill for this unit, let's go. Kill for S, kill for Nito, like that,
Yeah.
Oh, so that's actually a lot of things. And then also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because on the Chi Adept thing, like, Chain Guard is super fun, but because she's the only healer, if you use it once, if you want to use it again, she has to use a turn using a vulnerary.
Yeah.
Which is then her doing none of the interesting things. And also, Chain Guard has this problem, and I was really mad. This actually got someone killed the first time I played Chapter 5.
I know what's coming.
She leveled up HP.
Yep.
And then couldn't Chain Guard. So Vander, I'm so sorry, but you have to die now. Because you get the HP when you level up, or you don't get the HP. You get the empty point. Wow. Thanks, game.
You get the Bopper crossover of suffering from success.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so successful.
I appreciate this because I think it happened to me as well. But at the same time, you gotta admit, it's very entertaining that happened. Like, it makes for good content. Funny. So I can't. Honestly, I don't even want to dock points for it because it's so funny.
I don't either. I want to give points. For
it. Fair. Yeah, okay. I also forgot to mention that the fist animations, they were in the trailer for Engage. I think everyone was really excited to try them out. It turns out they were pretty worthless because, everything I just said. But the animations still hold up so well, even after seeing them like 5 times total. Like, it's one of the great parts of Unit feels like enjoying a unit's animation. And I kind of skip through most of the animations right now. Like, I hold A just out of habit, and so they're kind of flashy. But for hers, I will take my hands off the controller, put it down, and just to see it in full action. Like, those kicks are very, very cool.
Yes. I don't get to see them often because every person I have that uses fist does 0 damage with them. But I will say the Engage animations as a whole are just really, really good.
Yeah, very dynamic. I think overall, it sounds like there's a lot of bad and a lot of good, but a lot of the bad is funny. So I think we can get away with throwing Fram in good at the end. Okay. I'm convinced. Which is a complete opposite of what I think of her as a unit. I just think she's very funny. Okay, I don't know if I'm ever ready for this one, but Alfred. Alfred
Well,
is...
we'll see in part 2, everyone.
I can't believe they gave me Ford and then took away his swords and then got him doubled by every single enemy. I can't believe
in
it.
the game where weapon triangle is the best, they took away Ford's swords.
His only claim to fame. They also took away rescue dropping, which is the only other thing that Ford could do.
Yeah.
If you don't know, I hate Ford because he's always perpetually short of something whenever I use him. Generally, he's short on doubling, killing an enemy, doing just enough damage. And Alfred, in the early game for me, felt like the same unit, plus a bunch of other problems. Like, at least Ford didn't die that quickly, but Alfred gets like doubled by half the enemies, it felt like. This is probably like selective memory, but I don't remember Alfred performing very well in almost any battle that I used him in. And he was available for quite a lot of the early game. I had no way to replace him until I got to like chapter 7 or 8 or something, I think. So that sucked. So as a unit, he is bad. Sometimes in unit feel that kind of rolls over, like it underflows into good unit feel because they're so bad, like Fram's fists, where it's like if you can make it work, it's so funny. But what Alfred has, I think, is an offensive kind of mediocrity that never feels good to use. So right now, I would put Alfred in bad feel for that. But there are a lot of funny stories coming out of it, and I can see this underflowing at some point. So that's how I'm feeling right now. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. The original inspiration for, like, unit feel for my video on it...
That's right.
...was like, okay, every tier list, you know, puts calves, especially early game calves, pretty high, even if they're, like, not the best unit of the games. Like, Alan and Lance, they're not the best units ever, but they're pretty good. Then why don't I have fun using them? And then Engage is like, okay, what if we give you an early game cav, but then they also suck really bad? Can't do combat, can't do rescue drops, and only have one more move than infantry units. Okay, all right. So if I manage to make him good, then I've just made a good paladin, which is okay. That's the least interesting thing you can do in this series. And obviously it's engaged, so reclassing is super open. To get to that point, you also have to use Alfred for a long time to keep his levels up, keep him alive. He is a victim of the let's just say chapter 11 mechanical twist. And I was like, I'm not resetting for this guy. I hope Sigurd enjoyed his blood. So like, just not fun for me to use, but like I kept kind of using him because I was like stuck in the, oh well, he's the cav, it's gonna pay off, right? And then it didn't until Sigurd Emblem set me free.
Anakin meme. Yeah.
Yes.
I had a thing to add, I forgot what it was, but I'll probably come up with it when it's way too late to bring it up. I'll just throw him in bad.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna mess up my overlay.
Well, I'll say this because I just remembered about him. He's the big issue that I have with Engage, like as presentation wise, is that every cutscene is just awkward 3D models standing around with idle animations in the background while other characters awkwardly talk to each other. And he is in the background of every scene, standing there, T-posing, doing nothing, not driving the plot, not beating the enemies, nothing. Just a constant reminder of how useless he is. And so for that, bad feel, definitely.
That is true. Even once you've benched him, he will constantly be on screen to remind you that he does nothing. Whether it's plot or otherwise. That's a great point, actually. Yeah. Okay. Boucheron. This is one of my favorites for here, because Boucheron, I don't think he's as bad as a lot of people say he is, whether it comes to unit feel or as a tier list in general. But there is one big problem that Boucheron has, and it's that he can chain attack when people are very bad at probability. So he is a backup unit, and I think the only one you have for quite a while. So the only chain attacks in the game will come from him, and those are exactly at 80%. So first of all, if you don't know that chain attacks are always 80%, you're going to be annoyed at its accuracy because 80% is not reliable. Yes. It's like 90% real.
Yeah.
So he will miss sometimes because he's kind of by far have the most combat on player phase because no one else can attack twice on player phase or more than that. So, and he will miss sometimes because chain attacks can miss. 1 in 10 chain attacks will in fact miss. And just remember how many chain attacks you're going to do over the course of the whole playthrough. He's going to do a lot of them. And so people will think his accuracy is bad. And then when he actually attacks himself, his accuracy also isn't perfect. It might be a little bit better, it might be a little bit worse than 80%, but it's gonna miss sometimes. And again, people suck at probability. I have so many comments on my RNG video about people who say, well, this can't be right because I think something is off because I miss a lot more. And what's up with all these hits that shouldn't hit and stuff? And they're like, yeah, sometimes you miss a 90. That happens. And Boucheron is the emblemification of this problem. People don't know what 80% means anymore, I think. Yeah.
I assume you're talking about the FE6 rigged RNG.
That too, except this time I was engaged, but yeah.
Okay, I've not. Lots of RNG videos, or lots of people complaining about RNG not making sense, especially because the 80% is actually higher than 80%. But again, 80% is higher than 50, so it should be 100 in our brains. And chain attacks, I think Boucheron's a character that just feels better the second time you play the game when you know how chain attacks work, how their damage is calculated, how their hits calculated, which is, always 80, always 10% of max HP. And it starts to feel better. And Boucheron, I didn't like him a ton first playthrough, and I'm like a third of the way through second playthrough, and I like him a lot more because also, axes hit really hard, and when you know how engraves work and you can fix his accuracy on like his actual attacks, and you forge him a silver great lance super early in the game by just upgrading an iron axe all the way up that way. Spend all your resources on it, and then he does 50 damage to enemies on enemy phase, and you don't have to deal with the drawback of the great axe. And you put a hit engrave on it. He benefits earlier, I think, from a lot of the interesting stuff that's in Engage that can make characters good, because he doesn't need like a second seal. And he doesn't really rely on any crazy skills to maximize making him really good, which is that you just need extra hit and really powerful axes, which is the easiest strong weapons to get. So I'm a Boucheron fan now. I've converted.
Would you say that being able to OHKO is one of the best ways to boost your unit feel? Like just seeing a big number?
Yes. In a game where one rounding isn't super easy, he just one shots, and it's great.
I agree. I have one counterpoint though, is that Boucheron I think is hurt by the expectations that his class creates, which is the same problem that Ford and maybe Alfred have too, because Boucheron's an axe fighter, but his personal strength and strength growth are pretty bad for a fighter. Like he only has a 40% growth as an axe fighter and probably lower personal too. Like, so you expect this guy to pick up the axe and hurt the enemy a lot, and when he hurts them an okay amount, that creates a gap between what you expect a character like him to do and what he actually does, if you're familiar with Fire Emblem or with axe fighters as a general archetype. So I think that also hurts him a little bit. Like, I think a lot of people don't like him for that reason. Me, I benched him after chapter 8 or so I have nothing on him besides like his early game utility. So my experience with him is very limited. I'm glad you made him good though. Yeah. But you know what? Where would you put him? Because I'm not gonna tier these based off of hearsay from other people, besides you, because you're on here. Other than you. But I'm not going to tier him mid just because I didn't use him. So where would you put him?
I mean, this is the arbitrariness of this tier list. That's part of the fun. I'd personally put him in mid because like I had to do some work and it took 2 playthroughs.
It's not so bad. It took him 2 playthroughs to train him.
Yes, he took. You know the amount of times I had to level him up. I
killed the final dragon with him just to make sure I could. He would be good in my next playthrough. I gave him transfer bonuses.
I had to take him to the Tower of Volney and everything, and he still only got 80% hit on all these enemies. That's actually something, though. I guess it depends on your perspective, because if Fire Emblem 6 is your most recent game that you've played, I was impressed by the 80% hit rates, because I'm so used to axe fighters confidently walking up to armor knights with 40% hit on them, so... I don't know. Pretty nice. I'd put him in mid.
Okay. I'll throw him in mid then. Alright. Etie is one of my favorite characters from my playthrough because I used her all the way through, and she was a lot of fun to experiment with, different builds, different emblems, and I think if everyone made their own tier list for Fire Emblem Engage unit feel, they would probably put the unit that they put Lyn on in good feel no matter what, because Lyn just makes your unit good. There is just no question about it. Your unit gets Speed Taker, Alacrity, Astral Storm, call doubles. All those things separately are busted, and busted things are fun. And when you put 4 of those busted things into one character, that's amazing. And Etie, I mean, every unit works well with Lyn, but Etie I think especially is good because for me she was a sniper at first, which gets a bonus with Astral Storm, and as a backup unit, you can do all sorts of funny things with a longbow as a warrior, because I went from sniper to warrior. So my Etie was amazing. Her strength got massive. She was killing bosses in 1 round before they got to counterattack a lot of the time. And if I couldn't kill them, I would just call doubles, and the bosses wouldn't let me use my engage attack on the doubles, and the Etie clone would die and go, unbelievable, and that alone is entertainment value. For me, Etie, even though I know that she's basically just Rebecca in a game with better resource management, or better resources to make quote-unquote bad units good, I had so much fun with her that for me, she absolutely goes in good, and I honestly am not going to listen to what you say to change that, but I'm still curious if what your experiences are with Etie.
No, Etie is one of my favorite early game characters.
Right.
Especially in my second playthrough, I kind of focused on her a little more. I haven't had nearly as good luck with like all of the parts of Lyn that I think other people have. Alacrity and Speed Taker are really good, but I always found Astral Storm underwhelming until I put on Etie, who I think, if I'm not mistaken, does she have the highest strength growth in the game?
Maybe? I don't know.
Maybe? I can't remember, and
her strength is good. It sure is.
Yeah, it is. It is really good. It is what you would think Boucheron's would be. So I had. Oh, man, I've done crazy things with Etie that's pretty easy to do. Warrior's obviously incredible because it gives the warrior has the skill that lets you deal 50% extra damage against broken enemies. And if you focus on bows, that's perfect because she's not going to be responsible for breaking enemies. She's always going to be in that phase where like she's going to attack whenever you need it. She's not forced by the break mechanic. So you can take big advantage of that, which stacks with Astral Storm, which stacks with Divine Inspiration. So the chapter 13 bosses, one of them, I just one-shot an entire health bar with Etie Astral Storm. And it was no problem at all. It was just easy. It was free. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful. So I put Etie in good feel.
That's good. There was one thing I wanted to mention after this. I guess I'll say the longbows are also just like super fun to use in this game. Oh, and
yes.
Etie does something super important, which is having a good first impression that I think made me want to use her. And that's that she joins in a chapter where there's like Pegasus Knights flying around, and they made her exactly one-shot them on hard mode with the bow that she comes with. That's just, you can't get a better first impression than that.
Yeah. I've played through about 6 chapters on Maddening, and she still one-shots there too.
Nice.
So,
Let's
yes.
go.
So this game is very conscious of, oh my god, everyone hates archers. Make them one-shot flyers. So don't do the Rebecca thing where, oh wow, she 3-shots the flyer.
Yay.
She's so powerful.
What is chapter 13 again? Can you remind me?
That's the Fog of War chapter where Tamara and Marin and Peanut join.
Yeah, I hate that chapter. There's another chapter where Etie, or any archer with Lyn really, can do something very funny. You know that chapter where you fight the 4 hounds? I'm just kidding. I mean the one in the palace where you fight. I think it's all of them. Yeah, it's all 4 of them, but they're in like a little cramped room in the top middle. It's like
14,
a season.
I think that's 14.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's it's Solm Palace is the one.
Yeah.
Solm Palace. And they have that throne room with all the bosses inside, but outside is like 4 engage pools. So what you can do is, I didn't do this myself, but Raisin said that he saw someone do it or he did it himself. Apparently you can just take the engage pool, or rather you can go there, use Astral Storm on one of the bosses, like on Zephyia, because she's a flyer, she just dies. Put her just wait 4 turns, get in the engage pool, Astral Storm again, repeat the process like 4 times, and they will do nothing about it. This is one thing I'm definitely gonna try with like Alfred sometime.
Yes. Oh, that's fantastic. That's beautiful.
Just the thought
Do it.
of being able to do that is good feel.
Yes.
I know I said earlier
she
that
takes
doesn't count, but it doesn't matter.
Well, I don't know. I think it does count because nobody else would get to take as much advantage because she's got such ridiculous strength growth, and she's in chapter 14. Her strength's going to be anyway.
Oh, I wasn't saying it like that because I thought it was unfair. Like, I'm not interested in fairness for this, obviously.
No, who cares about fairness?
I was saying this
if
because...
you were interested in fairness, you wouldn't be attacking them like that.
No, I'm saying that because I said earlier I wouldn't use other people's experiences for rating units like this, but I already had Etie like pegged into good feel anyway. Last thing on Etie before I stop gushing about her, the S rank art in this game, I don't know if it's all around better than Three Houses, but her art is amazing. It's so pretty. Have you S ranked a character yet, Bobber?
I have not.
Okay.
I've seen some of the artwork. I'm gonna look it up now because it all, from what I've seen, it looks a lot better.
The Etie one.
Oh yeah, hers looks really good.
Yeah.
I mean, for one, wow, this is such an improvement over Three Houses.
It's
like looking at this, it even makes me like Bonet. That's incredible.
The thing with that artwork, it reminded me of like Cypher artwork. It's like that quality, right? Yeah. I'll see if I can remember to put it in the video.
Yeah. So sad that these are the first Fire Emblem characters that will not get Cypher art.
Oh yeah, shucks. Bad feel.
Yeah.
All right, just for that.
Heroes art, and I'm sure you appreciate that.
Just because you said that, I'm gonna put Céline in bad feel, just because I was reminded that Cypher has ended. Just sorry, Céline. Nah, I'm just kidding. I think Céline is fun to use in the early game because the game kind of attaches Celica to her, and Celica herself has a lot of qualities that make you go, whoa, I get to use this? That's so much fun. So, like, you're probably not going to put Celica on Louise or Chloe or Vander or something in the early game. You could. There's definitely reasons to. I even did that for a little bit in some cases. But in the early game, you want to stick to what's safe and what works, especially in Chapter 5, which is such a hard chapter. So, Céline gets Celica, and that means that Celica and Céline are on the same wavelength. They get the same feel points, as it were, and so that's a lot of fun. Now, as the game goes along, and you might not always be able to do that anymore or able to justify it anymore, that kind of falls off, and that's how I felt about Céline as a whole. Her personal class didn't feel very good for me to use. She kind of fell behind with 5 move compared to a lot of people having 6, or even 7, which sounds stupid because it's only a couple points, but it adds up over time. Like, I was having maps where Céline literally did nothing except use like a physic once or twice. Even though she wasn't meant to be a staff bot, she was meant to be an offensive magic user with even like her stats were good too. She had good magic and good speed, which I heard is pretty rare for her. She's not supposed to have both good in both. So in the end, I ended up benching her for someone else, and benching someone you trained, who you intended to use for all game long, doesn't feel good at all. That feels bad.
No, it doesn't.
That's painful. It's even worse than using a unit like Clan, who you know you're going to bench, but you're like, okay, whatever. At least I get to free up a slot for someone else. No, for Céline, I was running around with that feeling for like several chapters of like, maybe I should bench her, but I like her. Maybe I should bench her, but I like her. And that conflict is not fun because you know that if you want to bench her, you want to do it ASAP, so you can put someone else in and start experimenting with them and giving them resources and XP. So you feel like she's taking someone else's spot while you're using her. It's just not good. But I liked using her early on. That's why I kept using her. But in the end, that feeling of when she's on borrowed time is pretty awful. But I don't want to punish her for it because I still like her. I'll mull over that while you explain your experiences, because I'm still not over it.
I'm probably the only person that finds it absolutely heinous that they named a character Céline and didn't give them stabs. Like, she should be a healer. But that's beside the point. I see what you're saying, because, like, if I'm using a growth unit, I want them to, like, grow. Then they just don't. And then I keep forcing it. And then when you bench them, it's like, wow, I actually wasted part of my lifespan on this. And it didn't work out. And I don't know if it would ever work out. I always have this issue with early game mages in Fire Emblem where I just find them, whether it's like or Urk or where just training them, they kind of get Archer problem where, okay, they can safely attack most enemies without retaliation, so I'm going to attack with them first to set up kills so they're not getting the kill EXP, so they level up pretty slowly, and so she kind of falls into that for me too. That's also a problem with Clam, which is, I don't know, like, just kind of, she could do some chip damage. I guess she could break someone with a sword. If I remembered that she could use swords.
Hey, level sword is good on her. When I found it out, I was like, yay, +3 damage.
Yeah. Woohoo! She's gonna be so powerful with that, you know. I don't know, like, Warp Ragnarok is like really, really fun, and they do kind of set it up really nice for on her joining chapter. She just warps across the water. You know, Louis on the fort doing everything by himself, but because you get impatient of him dealing 3 damage to Armor Knight, you Warp Ragnarok over there, and then she blows somebody up, and then that's pretty cool. And you're like, that's awesome. Anyways, I'm gonna give Celica to Vander now, and then you move on with your life. Not a huge fan of Céline. I'm not a huge early game mage person.
I think what doesn't help with Céline is that, like we said earlier, the early units kind of suffer from a lot of things. And I realized another thing that they suffer from maybe is that XP gain, especially in Manning, perhaps is pretty slow. So it feels like you're not really training as much as you're using them as out of obligation. That also doesn't help. So I'll put her in bad. And again, it's not because I dislike Céline, but I dislike what the game did to her and what the experience did to my experience with using Céline, if that makes sense. I wish I liked it more.
Yes.
That's how I'll put it. All right, Louis. By the way, I realized I've been forgetting to credit who submitted these characters because I was preoccupied with OBS and making sure everything was working smoothly. So if I didn't say it out loud, I'm sorry. But I'll definitely have a graphic up anyway with like thanking people who submitted. So hopefully nobody feels forgotten if they're listening to this but not watching it very closely. So Louis, he's probably got one of the, if not the best, first impression in this game. I thought when I first got him and I used him for a couple chapters that he was like the second coming of Oswin. I was like, wow, they really did it. They found a way to make Armor Knights feel good again, and it took them a while, but they made a game where it actually matters what they do, and they gave them an extra property too to help them stand out amongst the crowd. Like, a big problem for Armor Knights has always been that like once your units can take hits by themselves, you don't really care that the fact that your Armor Knights don't die because no one else is dying. But Luis has that extra little thing on him where he doesn't get broken. And getting broken early game is when you have like characters with no weapon versatility whatsoever and a lot of diverse enemies. Not getting broken is a huge deal. So Luis being able to say, yeah, I don't really care you have an axe. I'm just going to hit you anyway. It's just so nice. And they gave him a free fort to use early on. And then there's like chapter with choke points next. It's perfectly set up to make Louis, I think it's Louis.
Louis,
very well. Yeah, Louis. He's just very well set up for success there, and this carries on for a while. And then at some point, I benched him at the same time as Céline because I had to face the reality that he was not as good as he was in the early game, but there was better ways to use his unit slot. But even the replacement I had for him, which is Gold Mary, had similar issues to where sometimes I was still feeling like, hey, maybe I should have been using Louise still. And in the end, that's probably partially like a lack of optimization of my part. Like if I forged him a stronger weapon with a better engrave, then maybe he would have worked out better for me. But I've heard like success stories of people using Louise like all game long and enjoying it. So just for his like work alone, I kind of want to just throw him in good, just because he's so good. He's like crucial. You throw Sigurd on him because you just want to. Most Armor Knights are like, oh, why do I have to deal with this movement issue? And with Louis, it's like, I'm going to deal with this movement issue and just throw Sigurd on him because he deserves it and he has great synergy with him. This is a good example of a good character feeling good to use. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
What
Wow,
about you?
I want Armor Knights to have the same move as other infantry units and the monkey's paw curl.
Yeah.
The great thing about Louis is that instead of bumping him to 5, they dropped everyone else down to 4. So then when you have the Sigurd ring available, giving it to him versus anybody else, he's actually like not just a favoritism pick for it, because he utilizes the extra movement just as good as anyone else, because the only 2 people that have more movement than him at base are Vander, who's like in a hospice at the 11th hour by the time Louis joins, or Alfred, who oh geez, I wonder what's going to happen to Alfred if he moves an extra 5 spaces. Whereas Louis takes like full advantage of that and just like doesn't die. I think he's also the beneficiary of this game having fixed weapon ranks. One thing I love about fixed weapon ranks is that it makes reclassing actually fun, because it's like, oh, awakening, I can make Long Ku a wyvern lord. Oh, he's got axes. Oh my god. And now here it's like you promote Louis to Great Knight, and he just gets access to silver swords and other powerful swords without having to actually train that up. So, even if you sacrifice like the ability to avoid break, you can give him multiple weapon types, and he still has that weapon triangle control for free, basically, because he can very easily go into Great Knight or a class with multiple weapons by just having proficiency from one emblem ring, which is always free. By the time he joins, you're getting enough bond fragments and everything to where you can just get weapon proficiencies for free, and it's not like it costs EXP or SP. So super easy character to build. He gets all the benefits of Sigurd, or I think he uses them better than pretty much everyone else. At least it feels that way. This is called unit feel, not unit fact.
I was about to say.
Yeah. Oh, I put him in good. And he's also got a strange personal skill. We haven't talked about personal skills because they're all really weird.
Oh, yeah.
In this game.
This is what I wanted to say about Boucheron, is that his personal skill is literally nothing when he joins, which is so stupid.
Yes. Yeah. Boucheron's got the Fram problem of, okay, he just has all these useless properties that'll be good maybe someday, and then Louis is like, I'm a Reddit shipper. And now I deal extra damage.
It's one where he's two girls in his like squares around him, basically, right? He's two adjacent women next to him, I think.
Yeah, as long as two women are adjacent within 2 tiles of him, he gets whatever the bonus is.
Yeah, I think it's +2 damage or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where like you see he's too short, and then you just kind of move like 2 people around, and then suddenly you can make it work sometimes. But and sometimes you just proc it by accident.
Yeah, which is usually how these skills go. You proc it by accident because you're just moving in a big ball of death because everyone's got 4 movement. And you're like, oh wow, Yuri Enjoyer activated. Louis so powerful.
I like that most personal skills don't really matter, and they finally made a game where both Alirs are almost identical, but the personal skills in the early game mostly rely on like women, like Louise's, and so female Alirs still just a little bit better just for that. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Just because there's so many characters that are like, if girls are watching me, then I become more powerful. So
exactly.
That's a.
Well, Speaking of people watchers and people who use Sigurd well, we got Chloe. If it wasn't for Sigurd, I would put Chloe in like mid or bad field probably, because I had 2 big annoyances when I was using Chloe. One is that I get to move across terrain, but she has so little move compared to older Pegasus Knights that it sometimes feels like it barely matters. Like, yeah, I can move over a river tile, but a river tile still in range of the enemy. I need like 3 more move to make this work. And then the other problem is, every time I attacked with her without having Sigurd on her, I expected her to like be able to canter away, because it's what I'm used to with Pegasus Knights these days, is let me move again. Like, I just played 3 houses, I just played, I don't know, FE9, FE10. Let me move after attacking. This is very important to me, and Chloe just doesn't do it and has 6 move. Fortunately, though, in this game, inheriting canter is very easy, and Sigurd is like by far the best used on her, I think. Like, maybe besides Louise in some points, but Chloe with Sigurd is something else. Chloe is just like the investment character of this game, where if you throw resources at her, she makes use of it better than almost anyone else. So I had no issues doing that, and the results were fantastic. But it leads me to wonder, like in the back of my head, how much of this is this unit being good, and how much of it is just haha, Sigurd go burr, and Sigurd just makes anyone good. That is like a lingering question that slightly sours the experience a little bit, but not to the point where I wouldn't put her at the very least in mid, but probably in good for me. I think she's sufficiently good to use, and I think she profits from the forge system as well, just because it lets you up the might, and then someone who doubles benefits more from that than most other units. So I enjoy that about her too. What about you?
Yeah, I liked Chloe a lot. Chloe and Louis were in my first playthrough, they were the only 2 like early game characters that I actually used throughout the entire game. They were honestly pretty easy. They didn't feel super investment heavy for me. I do agree that she's kind of got Aranis Emblem syndrome, where, oh, you're a flyer, congratulations. That's worthless. I guess it's not as bad because she doesn't lose movement by avoiding terrain, but but it's still nice, especially once she promotes and can gets that Griffin Rider skill super easily that lets her delete terrain basically for movement cost, get rid of movement penalties for it, and gets her staves and all kinds of other stuff. And I think she starts in a very good position where, on that first turn, her and Louis' inventories are flipped from what would be the best. So I trade their stuff on the first turn they join, and then Chloe just runs around killing mages, and it's pretty nice. It's a good first impression. She gets like an archer. It's like how the archers start near flyers. She gets to start near some mages. Gets to destroy them. It feels pretty nice, and I enjoyed Chloe.
Mm-hmm. On the topic of that mage, I read somewhere that sorry to interrupt though, but there's someone read the code of the game or something, and they saw that some enemies have hidden personal stats, and the mage near Chloe apparently has a hidden avoid debuff to make sure that Chloe kills him before he kills Louise. Just to make sure Chloe has a good first impression.
Oh my god, okay.
Apparently. This is hearsay, by the way. I haven't verified this.
I just want to know where these, again, where were these developers for Cecilia and FE6?
Hey, we still turned Cecilia's reputation around a little bit. Yes. We did all we could. I'll throw Chloe in good. Okay. We could do a couple more, I think. We got Yunaka. I mean, if we're talking first impression, this has got to be the best one in the game, right? I mean, maybe not the best one, as in mass appeal, but the best one is letting everyone know what she's all about, what this character is like. And if you like her, which a lot of people do, then you have a fan base for life. This is, I think Yunaka might be the most popular character in Engage overall, probably.
Yeah, this is not a scientific thing, but when I polled my audience for my Iron Man, Yunaka came in first.
Yeah.
For the deployment, who should I use? Yunaka was number one.
Mm-hmm. Was it close?
I'm gonna pull that up.
Okay, don't worry about it. I'll just keep talking.
So, yeah, no, it wasn't even close. She had 40 more votes than second place, which was Rosado. So.
Yeah, she is. She's also helped by the fact that she joins with an Emblem character on her. So, with Celica and Céline, you are helped by having all the tools available to that Emblem on her. And even though early game you don't really get the best impression of Mekkah, the best stuff comes later on. It's still kind of associated with her, right? That she can torch and light up the whole place or use shine. And then if you put her in the bush, the enemies have 0 hit on her, and if you're playing on hard or normal, the enemies will still attack and fail to kill her. And she gets that 30 crit, which means you get crit quotes, which is more dopamine and more character impressions. This is the best first impression that any character has in all of Fire Emblem, I think, probably. It doesn't get much better than the enemies literally cannot hit them, and I crit them back. And I get all the new dagger mechanics, all the benefits that, 1 to range, trying out poisoning the enemies, which turns out to be very fun, and forging daggers for +2 extra might just to make her better as a unit. And then you have the option of pairing her with Corrin later for the range stuff. Even if it's not the optimal character to use later on, I do feel like that strategy falls off a bit. It is so entertaining to use that it really helps Yunaka's unit feel overall, I think. And then, of course, people also just think she's attractive. That also doesn't hurt, I guess. So, yeah, really good.
Every line is also a meme to Hiya Papaya and Zappy.
Don't forget Holy Broccoli. I think she only says that once, but that's still so funny.
What?
Holy Broccoli.
Okay. What a strange, odd person. Fake person Yunaka is. But there's also, even beyond that, thief, so you can... Reclassing is easy if you want to do, sniper to get +10 crit and a killer bow and all that stuff and get 100 displayed crit. She's a very easy character to do that with. Some genius at Intelligent Systems decided that it would also be a good idea to have forging daggers be super cheap and also give +2 might per level. So, more, I guess. It's clear who their favorites were. So just everything kind of perfect storms around Yunaka to be great. Because also Fog of War in Engage is uniquely terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know whose bright idea it was to like, okay, Fire Emblem fans have been complaining about Fog of War for literally 25 years at this point. Let's make it worse this time by not letting you move through it.
Look, here's my headcanon. They didn't want you to bump into enemies because that feels bad. So now you just can't bump at all anymore.
Yeah, and then they just still come out of the fog and kill you, which you're still not allowed to do.
Yeah, that's the next problem. That's on slate for solving for the next Fire Emblem.
Yeah. They already fixed it in Advance Wars. Maybe one day. But Yunaka solves that problem by not getting hit and being a thief and having Mekkah. Pretty good.
Pretty damn good. I'll throw her in good for sure.
Yes.
There's one thing that I think slightly... It doesn't really sour me on Yunaka because overall her supports are pretty good. But supports, I think, are also a reason why I was a little hesitant on Chloe and why I have Céline in bad, I think. It's because her supports are... First of all, they're the first ones you unlock in the whole game. And they're with most people on your army. And Céline's C supports are the worst C supports in all of like Fates, Awakening, everything. They all have a bad reputation, but Céline is literally just tea parties. She is so boring in her C supports. I hate it so much. So boring. Oh my god, kill me. Because I forgot to watch them when they first came out because the game doesn't notify you that you have supports unlocked. So at one point I opened my support log. I was like, whoa, I have like 14 supports open and half of them were Céline and they're all about tea. I stopped drinking tea at that moment. I became un-British, as un-British as I can be. Like, dude, screw that shit.
Gosh.
Okay.
I hate tea now too.
I just made you hate tea.
I'm from the southern U.S. where like sweet tea is like the beverage, that is the drink, and now I'm just gonna think of C supports from now on. God damn it. This is awful.
Okay. Shall we do these two children as the last two then?
I think so.
All right.
John.
Two children, yeah.
Oh,
so Jean, I can be very short because I didn't really use him.
He is very short, yes.
Yeah. He's very British though.
Yes.
I was very excited to get him because I was like, well, now I can finally solve that problem with Fram where I chain guard and I take damage and I have to like use a phone. That sucks. But if I can make my Chia that heal each other, they can kind of make sure that they can always be chain guarding if I want them to, or I can have two healers. They're much more flexible than one Chi adepts. They'll be better than the sum of their parts, if you will. So I thought that would be very good, and then I ended up not really using him long term for like more than a couple chapters because the game is kind of limited on the unit slots, and Jean is not really at the top of my list of units to deploy, and neither is Fram. I forgot which I benched first. There's like a couple redeeming factors. The British accent is always very funny. It's very out of place, but it's very funny. And Obstruct Staff is, I think, available around the time Jean joins, and that's a very fun tool to play with, so that helps him a little bit. And there was like one more thing. I know from other people that you can do some very fun things with him, like Link King 7 made a video on Jean using Great Aether with Ike that is apparently very effective, but I said I wouldn't count other people's experiences. So for me, Jean is like a neutral, not even bad feel because I haven't really used him very much, just don't really have much on him. Have you tried him?
I used him a little bit. I was immediately impressed by the fact I was like screaming at the sky in Hallelujah when I was like, they gave us an Est that's a staff bot. You know,
that's very creative.
And then you see the staff bot EXP gain, and you're like, that's terrible. But then you're like, oh wait, I get Mekkah in Chapter 6, and Great Sacrifice gives you EXP based off of how many people that it heals. So like when I went into the Anna paralog, I was just intentionally getting everyone hurt or leveling up HP, not healing them, and just having Jean just go Super Saiyan but with healing and get those. He gets a full 100 EXP from that each time, so you don't have to worry about the fact that he gets 0 damage. He deals 0 damage, and it was like, yes, this is peak. And then if you're a DLC enjoyer, just go get Tiki, put Tiki on him, and then he has 100% growth rates in several stats.
Oh wow.
I'm pretty sure at least in defense he does.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Yeah. So there's things to do there that are theoretically fun, but it's also a pain in the ass because it means, one, you have to play the DLC paralogs, and the paralogs in this game are boring, and I don't like doing them. And B, then I have to like, you know what? He does change the arc though, because when Fram levels up HP, you're like, that's bad feel. But then when they start leveling up HP when you have Jean Great Sacrifice, that's good feel. and you're like, I'm gonna great sacrifice now.
Mm-hmm.
You like that's like character development, but for a level up.
I think the way they handled aptitude or whatever it's called in this game is very clever of them, actually. The fact that it doubles class growths makes customizing him a lot more meaningful. And like you can make him a general and have like 80% defense growth or whatever. That's the main example I like to use. But there's a lot like that I think will be really enjoyable. But I haven't really tried him enough to put him anywhere above mid. Where would you put him personally?
Mid, I would
Okay.
say. Like, I guess he's funny to grow, and you can do funny things. But also with the way like EXP is calculated in the game, like that great sacrifice thing, just do it on Boucheron if you really want. Like, it doesn't matter.
True enough. Okay, let's have one more child up here. So Anna is another unit that I just haven't used because I saw her bases and I was like, this is disgusting. I'm benching this unit for anyone else that's better. I didn't feel like training her up from 0 to hero, as it were. But I do appreciate that they coax players. Like, this is probably bad feel, but it's so funny to me. They kind of convince people who used up their money in an unwise way to use this awful units to have like a 3% chance of getting gold. And I think that's like a massive funny scam. You can see it's more cynical, like they're trying to sell the DLC with the silver card, but it's a very funny in-game scam that also works in character for Anna because she's greedy for gold. It works on so many levels. It's awful, but it's so funny to me that a 3% proc skill makes people use you. Like, there's all sorts of way to build her to be better. Obviously, you have to like raise her from axe fighter to make her a mage, and then she has a good magic growth, and you snowball her from there to get more money. But at base, this unit is awful. Like, her stats suck. It sucks so much. But because people are so desperate for gold, the fact that people are willing to use Anna says a lot about society, and I enjoy that very much. I haven't tried her though. What about you?
It's very deep and powerful. I tried using her, and then she died immediately. The thing about, I'm just wondering, maybe in the DLC, because like the DLC kind of invalidates Anna because they dump so much money on you. But at least that's as of right now. There's what if it's the long con? Wave 3 comes out, and the DLC just takes like 60,000 gold from you.
It adds like a chapter 11 event where they also take your gold.
Yeah. So it becomes the DLC goes from pay to win to pay to lose, and that makes Anna a lot better. I think that'd be fun. But you know, it doesn't just force you to use your unit slots unwisely because you used your money unwisely. It also forces you to start using your stat boosters unwisely, because this is a game where a lot of people face low percent crits. And it's like, oh, well, I have these goddess icons here. Give them to Anna. So she get more bullions. I'm just going to dump everything on her. Also, she can't kill things because she's terrible. One thing that hurts characters like Anna in modern Fire Emblem, like I'd say really Shadow Dragon on, is that when reclassing is required to make them good, you're just not going to know on a first playthrough. Because on a first playthrough, when you're not looking up growths or anything, I guess it depends on the player. Like, I don't look up anything on the first playthrough. So I wouldn't know the magic growth is great. So I wouldn't know to reclass to mage. So then you got to get that knowledge. And then you get that knowledge, and then you do that. But because her stats are just so bad, it kind of forces you into that. So she really has one pathway to be good. It's going to be the same every time. So kind of boring, and you have to go through the slog of getting her to level 10 anyway, which might not be so bad, except for chain attacking doesn't give you EXP, so that doesn't help.
Well, chain guarding does. The world is just not fair, which is another lesson that Anna's trying to teach you.
Yeah, Jean, you know what? For a unit in bad field, Jean just keeps on winning, but I guess he's in mid, but I don't know. Not a huge Anna fan, but very funny with how the personal skill convinces people that it's going to be useful.
I think the lessons that you learn from Anna are super intriguing, and the lessons themselves are probably good feel, but you're only able to enjoy them because you didn't go through the pain of using Anna.
Yeah.
So I think she ends up in bad feel overall, just for that.
Yeah.
But again, this is all very personal. I'm sure once you get to making money with Anna, there are ways to just keep on going, get like infinite gold. At that point, it'll probably feel good. And then I suspect that soon after it feels good, it starts falling off. I get that feel because you get that feeling of, okay, now I have like infinite gold. Now what do I do with it? Like, I just beat the game's economy. Now nothing will be interesting anymore about it.
Suddenly you realized you actually used your money wisely all along, because using your money is the wise thing to do instead of it just sitting in a useless bank account.
Yeah. I think the problem she solves is that the country donation, right? Where the game doesn't really tell you how useful that'll be. And that's why people are turning to Anna, because they just used it like all the donation money to, you know, do donation money. They just gave the money back to the countries that gave them the money in the first place. That's the problem she solves. But if you know it's not a good idea to do that in the first place, then there is no problem for her to solve.
Yeah. So for Anna to be good, you have to waste all of your money.
Mm-hmm.
And then Anna gives you money so that you can then dump it into countries. But to make the countries a good ROI, you have to go do the auxiliary battles. But then the auxiliary battles themselves give you money, so it invalidates dumping the money into them to begin with. And so it's just a giant massive waste of time.
You lost me. Is
and
this
at
a pyramid
which point,
scheme? Is this a pyramid scheme? Are you trying to talk me into a pyramid scheme?
I'm just trying to say that the things that make Anna good ultimately are just extremely elaborate, unnecessary ways to make everyone good and to also waste a ton of your time.
You only have so much time on your planet, everyone. On this planet, anyway. I don't know about other planets, but on this planet, you only have infinite time. And I do not recommend using half of it for Anna.
We die, want to go to the Somnial, but we wake up in the monastery and, oh no.
The Divine Dragon looked at me!
Oh, God.
I didn't think it would devolve to this, but apparently it did. Alright, I think that's enough unit fuel for a day. I'm starting to feel a little bit too much.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden I look at the rest of the characters left on here and I'm like, oh my god, there are like 4 parts worthy of this.
Y'all, don't forget that not submitted are not going to be discussed, right? It's only going to be engaged and not engaged. So it's not as bad as the screen makes it look. It's...
Yeah, well...
Let's see, we did like 11, I think, and I think there were 37 submissions with some of them doubles, so I think we could probably do this in another 2 if we work hard.
Yeah, I mean, well, except for the fact that Lyndon's going to take his entire own part, but beyond that...
Yeah, there's definitely going to be more discussion on him than on Anna, Yunaka, and Jean combined, that's for sure.
Yes.
Well, at least we got the time here on this channel. This was another very short video of exactly 1 hour. Hope everyone enjoyed, and if you did, you know, check out Bopper. He has a channel as well. I'll link it in the description down below. Thank you for being on here, Bopper.
Thank you for having me, Mekkah.
And thank you all for watching, and we will feel you next time.
Oh boy.